Welcome everyone. Today we have here on the podcast slash video, depending where you are watching this, probably one of the coolest guests we've ever had. We have Jackson Italiano, who is the current world record holder for 24-hour pull-ups. And it's a pleasure to have you here. Welcome, Jackson, and welcome with us.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Perfect. Now, obviously, we're going to discuss what he was able to do because it was absolutely incredible. So he was able to go above 8,000 pull-ups in 24-hour time, which is basically almost incomprehensible to the majority of people out there. So I think I will begin with like a question for you, Jackson, which is how did everything start? Like one day you decided I'm gonna break the world record. How did it work?
Um, I've always been very goal driven. I like to challenge myself a lot, but I think the pull-ups just came from, oh, naturally I was just always good at upper body strength. So maybe when I was about 13, I got into competitive cycling and I did that for close to 10 years. And I'd really built a strong, uh, I was just very disciplined, like had good perseverance. I just was very goal driven in that area, and I just learned a lot when it came to putting in hard work and knowing that would give me results. But obviously, when you're just training pretty much legs the whole time, your upper body is pretty weak and ugly. So I'd occasionally go down to the local park near my house, and I just do like pull ups or chin ups and a bit of core mobility just to engage that area. It helps a lot on the bike as well. And I don't know why, but above all, I noticed that my pull-ups were like superior towards everything else I did in the park. So I remember when I was young, I had these weird stairs in my house where they're kind of like jutted out from the wall. They're not really like normal staircase. So when I was like 10, I used to go up to them and just do pull-ups like that, just hold it like that, just do 10 pull-ups at quite a young age. And I didn't think that was like spectacular or anything, but I just did it for some reason. Like every time I need to go to the toilet, I just like go past and do that.
Um,
And then I noticed that when I went to the pull-up bar near the park at my place, I think I cranked out like 20 or something in a row. Having not done pull-ups in about 5 years. And I was kind of like, well, I feel like this is a bit unnatural. I'm sure I'm probably good at this for some reason. So anyway, I came to this point in my competitive cycling journey where I wasn't really progressing to where I wanted to go. And I'm in my 20s, so I missed out on a lot of going out in my teen years because I was very concentrating on training, getting up early in the morning, and pretty much I had enough of that because I wasn't getting the results I wanted. So I was kind of like, well, I built like all this idea of what it is to be disciplined and self-controlled and knowing how to properly train for something. I don't really want to waste that after 10 years of cycling for nothing. So I was kind of like, well, maybe I should propel this energy into something that I'm actually good at, which is kind of ridiculous because something like pull-ups is like completely incomparable to cycling, which is a professional sport. So I was kind of like, it's kind of irrelevant, but you know what? I'll do it anyway. It's so I was having a look at a bunch of records and I came across the 24-hour one and I was like, try to work it out. It was 7,715 at the time. And I was like, oh, that works out to be roughly five and a bit per minute, which is kind of crazy, I thought, if like in hindsight. But I was like, oh, well, I'm going to regret it if I don't give it a shot. So I'll train for it and see what happens. And that's pretty much where it took off.
Amazing, amazing. And okay, so guide me through the mental process. You did look at this record here, which I mean, 5 pull-ups per minute for 24 hours. It sounds crazy, right? Like because,
Yeah.
uh, but like, were you not like scared? Were you not afraid of the magnitude of what you had to do?
Not, I don't know. It's a good question. I think, uh, like I had thought about it And I knew that it was definitely possible because someone had already done it. So it was like, well, it's not inconceivable to do something like that because it's humanly possible if someone's already done it. And I don't know, I think I just did a lot of research on it. And there's not that much out there, but you just listen to interviews of people that have done it and you hear about their training process. And because I had such a strong background in endurance sport, I felt like it was definitely doable for me because I knew what it was like to literally just be in the pain cage for hours and hours, day after day. So I didn't really think that that would be a problem. But I think what was difficult for me was trying to transfer my skills from the bike onto the pull-up bar because they're different types of endurance sports. Yes, one's going for 24 hours and it's a continuous exercise. With cycling, you don't stop really. It's always consistent pedaling. Whereas on the pull-up bar, you're doing 5 a minute, you get off. Yeah. I just tried to transfer all my skills that I'd learned from like polarized training and use that into pull-ups. So I think just having to believe in yourself and knowing that you can probably do it if you try, because you don't know if you don't try. And that was the main thing. As long as I knew I could give it a shot and see what happened within the first 2, 3 months of training, yeah, I think that's the best way to do it. Because you can always look down on yourself and be like, oh, can't do it. But you got to actually at least try it. You don't know how quick the results will come.
Incredible, incredible. And like to prepare yourself, let's begin with the mental aspect. Did you visualize yourself like many people say to do? Guide me through that part. Did you do any visualization or anything?
Yeah, I actually did. I think about it a lot. Um, like when I'm in bed or something, like about to fall asleep, I'd kind of like dream of the moment where I would pass that old record. And it's always a really powerful thing to do because it's just like it's like a dangling carrot. You just want to be there. You can visualize it and you'll just know what it's like to think about it. You just get excited thinking about it. So I think that's enough to kind of get the cogs going. And yeah, I'd say I did that most days. I was just thinking about it. I think it's a really powerful tool that a lot of athletes can harness. I'm sure most of them do it anyway, because in order to be able to visualize it, is it like one part of the puzzle? If you're not going to able to if you're not able to visualize it, it's unlikely that you'll be able to do it, right?
Mhm. Exactly, exactly. I agree, and that's true for everything in life. I think everything. Like I've written like several like best-selling books, and if the idea is not there yet, you can't do it. Like if you don't see where you're going, you're just gonna start. Like it's just gonna be like a dream rather than a goal, and that's so incredible.
Mm.
And okay, so you mentioned the pain cage. How do you deal with the pain? Guide me through what happens and what do you do?
It's different. I think it depends what sport you do, but in particular pull-ups, because if I consider what it was like as a cyclist to be doing all those endurance hours, they're relatively pain-free because you're riding at an intensity that's below threshold. So it's like the most efficient way to be riding. It's the easiest way to break down fat stores, and you can easily hold a conversation while riding. So I think the main idea was, and that's really good, that type of training, because it builds your mitochondria, your aerobic system, and it just makes your muscles hold out for way longer than what it would be if you didn't do that type of training. So I really transferred that knowledge over into the pull-ups, and that helped a lot. You do get sore, but it's nothing like it's just so different from cycling because you're not huffing and puffing a lot. You just and you have a break every 50 seconds every minute if you want to do the first 6 pull-ups or whatever. So I think initially it wasn't too bad, just very boring. But once you started incorporating things like intervals into the training, it gets a bit more difficult because you're ramping up from your endurance pace. You're doing 6 a minute, and then you'll add in intervals such as 5x5s where you're doing 10 pull-ups a minute for 5 minutes, and then you have 5 minutes at endurance pace. So that type of session is difficult because you're alternating between your endurance pace and a high interval workload. So that's difficult. I think because, as I said before, because I was so used to what it was like on the bike, I was just very easy to transfer over. But then again, there's not that much scientific literature backing up what is how to properly train for something like pull-ups because it's such a obscure thing, right? So
Mhm.
it doesn't work very well to transfer the two because you're working completely different muscle groups and one's stop and start and one's continuous. So it worked for a good portion of it, but later on, when I started reaching out to other people who had already had the record, I learned that there was a way more efficient way of doing the pull-ups in order for me to actually get the record. So I think the best strategy for that, from what I've learned, is getting the bulk of the pull-ups done in the first half of the day, rather than just riding at a steady pace the whole time. Because it's impossible to do. If you're asking someone to stand at a pull-up bar and do 6 every minute, it's just not doable. And people who train for this think that they can do that, but humanly, no one's done it. Your body's always going to give out after 19 hours. So the best way to do it is to do it at a very high rate for the first half of the day. And that way you'll have a lot of time later to catch up. Because if you're just doing the one pace the whole time and you skip a minute, you're going to be freaking out mentally. You're going to be like, oh, shoot, I've lost a minute. Like, that's not going to play well into your mentality. So the best way to do it, despite what many people think, is to get the good chunk in the first half of the day. So when I was training for something like that, I would I saw how long I could hold a rate of 10 pull-ups a minute for, and I tried to extend that for up to 6 hours. And once I could do that for 6 hours, that's when I knew I was ready. Because it's pretty much 3,600 pull-ups in 6 hours, almost half of what the current record was. So if you have 18 hours left of the day to do that, it's no problem really. So yeah, that was when it was hard working out the 10 per minute. It was just absolutely brutal because it's not really endurance pace. You're going well above threshold, but you got to hold it for a whole 6 hours, which is uh, not good. Not good for anyone's
Wow.
mental health.
And tell me about what happens because I remember you told me on Instagram that the last 3 hours you basically didn't do any pull-ups in the end because you were running out of energy. What happened in the last 3 hours? So how was your body feeling and everything?
um, Throughout the day, I felt pretty rubbish at the start just because I was actually sick on the day, which is annoying. I had a bit of a cold, but I got better throughout the day, which is weird. Uh, I was like up and down. I had hypothermia at one point. I couldn't reduce my core temperature. I had to jump in the cold shower for about 5 minutes. It was all over the place, but once I got into a rhythm, yeah, there was nothing stopping me. But at the end, I just couldn't straighten my arm anymore. I think it was because I had a break after I hit the record. You don't want to have too many breaks because your body gets cold and it takes a while for it to get back into the rhythm of things. And once you do that after doing that many pull-ups, it's pretty much impossible to get your body going again. And in hindsight, I definitely could have kept going, but I just didn't want to risk it because the people who look at the evidence for Guinness are very particular about how they want you to perform the pull-up. So if it's not straight, then they're not going to allow it. So I didn't really want to risk that. So yeah, I think in hindsight, it was good that I stopped for that reason because otherwise I probably would have disallowed the record. Because if you look at the video footage, the last few reps, just my right arm isn't quite straight, very close, but I just physically could not straighten it because of how tight it was. It was like it was like a plank of wood. You couldn't even push through it. It was just yeah, very very tight. So that's why I had to
Mm.
stop. Otherwise, I would have kept going. But you're just so drained mentally. Yeah, you're very tired.
I think you are describing because basically like to move the muscle. I mean, you probably know this because you are almost a doctor as far as or you're trying to become a doctor, and basically the muscular contraption is all about calcium and magnesium. But the problem is the magnesium most of the time. Why? Because calcium you have like almost an unlimited amount of calcium in your bones, which the body can break down and release. So the muscular contraption can happen. But the magnesium is not the same. So magnesium is necessary for your muscle to relax. So what you were describing right now. So if you run out of magnesium or calcium becomes too dominant over magnesium, you reach a point where you can't really move properly. So what were you doing when you were like doing the record? Were you taking electrolytes? Like guide me through, like, because like most of my public will be nutritionists, dietitians, doctors, so they want to know like the details. What were you doing?
Um, if I worked, yeah, if I think about what I ate and drank, I would say that I probably knocked down about 12 Gatorade bottles. So that's full of electrolytes, plenty of water, pretty much just trying to drink as much as possible to keep the fluids up. And because if you're not drinking, it's not only bad for your like muscles, but it's not bad for your brain as well. You just crash. So I had to keep that up. And because I was under such a stressful workload, I didn't urinate for the first, I think maybe 14 hours, which is crazy
Wow.
because I drunk so much and I didn't even feel the need to go because I was just sweating it all out. But food wise, I made sure to eat a lot of carbs, no protein pretty much during the thing. Even before that, I think I had a good bowl of pasta a few nights before and every night after that up until the event. I wanted to stay off caffeine for as long as possible because if you take it too early, you're just going to crash. Same with glucose and those little gels that you probably see a lot of athletes use. You don't want to have them in the first half because they're just going to spike your blood glucose, and that's just not going to. That's not beneficial. So I
You're
waited for
gonna
the end
crash.
for that. Yeah, exactly. So I waited for the end to use that. So I really needed it. But things like bananas, like proper food will get you a long way for that type of stuff. As long as it's very carb dense and you have the electrolytes that you need, which in that case I took through liquid. But yeah, I think I had a lot of Cliff Bars. They're very high in carb sources, but the problem is they make you very thirsty as well. They're very starchy, so it's good in that it makes you drink more water, but it's just annoying. And honestly, after that day, there's so much I don't want to eat anymore just because of that record attempt. I'd eaten so much of yeah.
That's so interesting.
So
That's so
yeah, I can't really think of what else might ate. Pineapple actually. Pineapple is apparently a lot of another guy who had the record before. He had in the first 6 hours he didn't eat anything but pineapple. Didn't drink anything either for the first 6 hours. Just ate pineapple. I know I didn't want to risk trying that because it seemed to be dangerous, but it must have a lot of energy and it also has the hydration factor in it. But I did have pineapple, but not to the extent where I only had it for the first 6 hours. I thought that was crazy.
Yeah, pineapple has some enzymes inside, like bromelain, and they do help with inflammation, and they do help also because as you do the pull-ups, like your amino acids, the muscles are going to be broken down, and that helps basically to clear them in an interesting way. But that brings me to a different question, which is, so you were working your muscles, but you were not taking like any something like branched chain amino acids to repair on the spot, something like that. You didn't try.
No, it wasn't. No, no supplementation. Nah, I didn't have any supplementation. Even during training, I didn't take anything. Yeah, I didn't really look into it. I don't know. I was recovering so quickly throughout my training days. I didn't feel like I needed it. I don't know. My diet during training, it wasn't anything special. I would pretty much be eating whatever I wanted as long as I made sure that I had a good serving of carbs before a big training day, and make sure I ate protein afterwards. But nothing specific. I didn't really do any type of calorie in and out type of calculation like that. I don't know. I have a good idea of gauging what I need without going into the nitty gritty of it. So there's nothing too specific, unfortunately. But yeah, it would be interesting to experiment with that type of thing. But the thing is, you can't really tell, I think, for a lot of that stuff. I don't know if it's all, I'm assuming it's not placebo because there's scientific literature to back it. But I don't know. It's definitely something I'd be willing to try, but I just didn't really look into it that much.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, like I think this kind of stuff you need to test them and see how you respond to them. but they can really like give you what you need in the moment you need it. Because if you think about it, like like your muscles are breaking down when you're putting them under like a continuous strain. So when the muscle is breaking down, it also needs to repair itself. So how do you do that? Well, you need amino acids to do it. You need magnesium to for the relaxation. So there are certainly aspects that like nutrition can help you with. Should you should you try? Because I think with what you did, and you had 3 hours 15 minutes to spare. I mean, I think that the roof to 10,000 is not impossible. What do you
No,
think?
not at all. Well, funny you mentioned that because a few years ago, so the guy who gave me the information that I needed to train properly for it, which was doing a high amount of reps in the first half, his name's Andrew Shapiro. He's from America. He actually got 10,020 pull-ups, but Guinness didn't accept his record because his arms weren't fully straight. So that's just living proof already that it can be done, even if it wasn't what Guinness wanted. If someone can just take that extra step to make sure that your arms are straight, it's not even like a question of whether it's possible or not. It will definitely be a thing in the future. And the funny thing is that he had 5 hours he didn't use. He didn't use the last 5 hours. So it just tells you that you can go beyond 10,000. Yeah, definitely. Um, definitely humanly possible for sure.
I think so. I think so. And if you decide to do it again, I will help you with all of these, with all of the nutrition phase, because I think if you go above 10,000 with the Guinness approval, I mean, it's gonna be like, those records that they stay there for forever, like
Yeah,
the long jump record that has been around, I don't know, 30 years or
yeah,
something. Like because 10,000 done like with proper straight arm, it's probably like unconceivable. Like 8,000
yeah.
is already like what? Like because I remember when I read David Goggins' book, which he was able to do 4,030, and you basically double that. Like you double David Goggins' record, which is like one of the hardest men alive. It's like unbelievable. Like, did you know anything about him before getting into the record?
Uh, Funnily enough, I didn't know anything about him. I hadn't heard about him. I don't know how. Because he's so well known. I must have been living a rock under a rock at that point. I don't know. I think I'd started training for it, and then I told my friend that I was going to go for it, and he was like, "Oh, David Goggins had that record," and I was like, "Who?" And he was like, "The Navy SEAL guy," and I had to look him up. I was like, "Oh, okay. Who is this guy?" I still haven't read any of his books. I will get around to doing that. But yeah, I just didn't know much about him. But yeah, I think that's probably why the record is as famous as what it is, just because of him.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's great to have a good history of a record like that. We got influential figures like David Goggins who make the record what it is. So yeah, I blame my ignorance for not knowing that he was involved in that. But yeah, it's great.
Like I'm like so. I don't know. Even talking to you, it seems so bizarre to me what you were able to achieve, because like I thought about it, like, and I'm like, really 24 hours of endurance doing pull-ups. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy, but it can be done. You're living proof that when a human being puts their mind to it, basically everything can be done.
Yeah, that's right.
And Jackson, like so you were mentioning like competitive cycling, and is it something you're still doing? Is it something you keep want to do it, or did you stop with it?
Um, I think I don't know. It has been on my mind. I really like cycling. I love it. It's really good for the mind. I always feel great when I come home from a ride. But I think to get myself back into the competitive mode is just very difficult. And at the moment, it's hard for me to see myself doing it just because labored for so many years doing it. Uh, I think you kind of forget what it's like to live a normal life when you're doing stuff like that, which is something I want to get used to. But in the future, I'd definitely consider going back into competitive racing again. I'd love to do it, but just at the moment, I just want a bit of a rest, I think. I still watch the professional. I'm watching the Giro at the moment, which is on, as you probably know.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. I just got my bike serviced again, so it's there calling for me to ride it. But the problem is that Sydney's a bit of a hassle to be riding your bike. It's just not very friendly with the cars, which is completely understandable. And it takes a while to get out of the city before you start going into some nice roads. But yeah, I do want to do it soon. I've got to visualize a goal before I can do it. So hopefully it'll come to that.
So right now you told me like on Instagram we were talking that you're working on your university career, and is that the next goal for Jackson?
Yeah, I think so. I had in mind going for the hour record for pull-ups, but I kind of decided against that. I think what I realized is that I'm usually good at things if I have full concentration on it. If I juggle a bunch of different goals, it's not very achievable. But if you just have one that you're consistently going at, I'll eventually go there. So I think at the moment, it's getting into medicine would be fantastic. That's the main goal I think at the moment. It's a nice change from doing something physical and doing something a bit more mental. A lot more relaxing, I'd say, than having to grind away at the pull-up bar. But yeah, I think that's where things are headed at the moment.
Okay, when do you have an exam to pass to get into medicine? How does it work?
In Australia, you have to uh, there's a medical admission exam, and you have to place quite competitively within the field of whoever else is also going for it. And I think you also it depends what uni. Every Australian uni has a specific criteria that you need to follow. Some will cater more towards people living in rural areas, or if you have an indigenous background. Um, and others are undergraduate ones. But for where I am, I think you need to place well in that medical admission exam and also have a good university GPA. But as long as they're all above the admission, then you do have a chance of getting in. But then you got to from the outs, you got to sit the interview. Yeah, it's very competitive. So we'll see how we go with that.
Yeah, but I guess like with what the world record taught you, like you can that's a goal you can achieve like 100%. Like I mean, you've already proven the whole planet that you are like in the top 0.001% of achievers. So I'm sure you can nail this.
Oh yeah, definitely. If I could visualize it strongly and pretty much propel what I was doing in my training towards my academic area, then yeah, the sky's the limit, pretty much.
I agree. I agree. Like I was able to like in I mean you are like the king of sports in academics. I've done like a lot because like I was able to write like two best-selling books in essentially like 6 weeks of lockdown, the first lockdown in Europe, and they were both based on about 150 scientific papers. So it is very doable. Like, and it's really like a matter of, yeah, like your scheduling regimen working. Like today I'm gonna write 5,000 words, or today I'm gonna study 10 papers, and you actually do it. When
Yeah.
you do that, like I think it's very similar to what you were describing. Oh, obviously, no, it's not very similar. You have a freaking world record, and they don't, so it's not the same. But like the kind of mindset, I think is the same. And so I have one more question for you, Jackson, and then I let you go because I know you are like you're busy. You have like the life going, and so are you always with this kind of mindset in every area of your life? Like, is this Jackson like everywhere?
Uh, I'd say pretty much. I have very high expectations of myself. I don't really think it's healthy because you can sometimes let yourself down if you're not getting the results that you want. But I think it's just a balance between being realistic with what you can achieve and also pairing that with your goals as well. There's so many things I want to do, as you probably want to do as well. And having a mindset such as one that I used to get the record is certainly helpful in achieving whatever you want. But you've also got to be not get cocky and not get ahead of yourself because we are human and we obviously can't do everything. So in order to stay humble and realistic is definitely something that you need because you don't want to be wasting your time doing stupid things, but you also want to achieve what you want. I don't know. It's just a good balance between knowing your limits and also having being very goal oriented as well.
Amazing, amazing. So, guys, I think we need to close the interview here. I would stay with asking question to Jackson for, I don't know, 5 hours because this is super exciting, but he has to go. So we have to say goodbye. Jackson, it's been a pleasure to have you here, and maybe I will invite you again in the future if you are available. And because it's really really good. And if we manage to if I manage to convince you to try another record, please let me know so we can do it together because it's gonna be really 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 exciting.
We'll
And
do.
right, guys. So I will say goodbye. Thank you again, Jackson, and I will see you next time.